I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a double murder in the suburbs of Virginia. It involves an IRS agent, an au pair, and an ad on a fetish website involving BDSM. Here's the story. Brendan and Christine Banfield were married with a small child. They lived in a beautiful $1 million home in the D.C. suburbs in Herndon, Virginia. Brendan worked for the government as an armed IRS law enforcement agent. To help with their small child, the Banfields hired an au pair. Her name was Juliana Perez Magalhaes, and she was from Brazil. Everything seemed to be very normal with this family until the morning of February 24th, 2023. On that morning, a man named Joseph Ryan showed up at the house. He was responding to an ad on a fetish website from a woman who was into BDSM, cutting, and knife play. The ad was placed from Christine Banfield's computer. Now, what happened next that morning is not 100% clear, but the results are. Christine was stabbed and killed. Joseph Ryan was shot and killed. Juliana, the au pair, called 911, as did Brendan Banfield, Christine's husband. Then, months later, Juliana was arrested and charged with murder. Then, prosecutors charged Brendan Banfield with murder. So now in this case, we have 2 dead bodies, 2 defendants, and a lot of unanswered questions. This case has many layers to it and shrouded in some level of mystery here. And it took a while for investigators to try to uncover this to get to the point where they could bring charges in the case, but they have. And in September of 24, Chief Kevin Davis from the Fairfax County Police Department spoke publicly about the case. Let's take a listen.
On February 24th, 2023, I stood in the middle of a cul-de-sac street in Fairfax County and described the deaths of 2 persons inside of a residential home. Now, 570 days later, we know the deaths of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield are both, in fact, murders. As you are aware, we charged Juliana Margalis with the murder of Joseph Ryan on October 13th, 2023. She remains in custody and awaits an upcoming trial. As described by Mr. Descano, we are today announcing aggravated murder charges against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine Banfield, and Joseph Ryan. To be clear, Brendan Banfield, then 38, and Christine Banfield, then 37, were married and living in a single-family home with their then 4-year-old daughter. Also living in the house was the family au pair, Juliana Margalis, then 22 years old. Joseph Ryan, then 39 years old, lived in Springfield, Virginia at the time of his murder inside the Banfield home. Fairfax County police officers responded to a 911 call from within the home on February 24th, 2023. In an upstairs bedroom, we found Joseph Ryan deceased as a result of gunshot wounds and found Christine Banfield suffering from stab wounds. Christine was transported to a local hospital and pronounced dead. We recovered 2 firearms and a knife. We know Brendan Banfield and Juliana Margalis, the family au pair, were involved in a romantic relationship at the time of the murders. I will not describe our victim Joseph Ryan's relationship with anyone involved in the case at the moment because this investigation continues. And like any criminal investigation, our probing of the facts does not end when an arrest is made. This much is clear. We have evidence to now allege that Christine Banfield's life was unlawfully taken and Joseph Ryan's life was unlawfully taken. We are very limited, as Mr. Descano stated, in providing additional details to your many inevitable questions this evening. We will not try this case in a news conference, nor will we compromise the integrity of our ongoing probe and investigation. The detectives, prosecutors, and victim services specialists who still work tirelessly on this case know who they are. To the Benson and Ryan families, a special thank you for your patience and trust.
Okay, it took them a while to get there, right? It wasn't an immediate arrest. There was a long investigation. And the first one arrested was the au pair. She was arrested first. Took a while then to arrest the husband later on. But remember, the au pair is one of, there were a couple of calls made to 911. So you call 911, you know, you gotta speak, you have to communicate, you have to say what was going on. That brings me to my first question of the investigation. What was the au pair's story? You're calling 911, people are gonna respond. What's the story? Let me bring in our guests who are going to help us try to figure this all out. Joining me, the hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, Kevin Greenlee and Anya Kane. Also with us, former homicide detective Chris McDonough. Great to see everyone. I just want to walk through this from the Washington Post because, like I said, this story levels. I mean, it's got levels to it. So let me just read through this first so we have a better idea. According to the account, Margulies gave detectives she had left the house not long after Brendan Banfield and planned to drive to the National Zoo for a day trip with the Banfield's then 4-year-old daughter. But moments after leaving, she realized she had forgotten their lunches in the refrigerator and turned back to retrieve them. She told police that she saw a man walk in as she looked back at the house. She said she called Christine Banfield, who did not answer. That's the mom, the wife. The au pair next called Brendan Banfield, the husband. After he arrived at the home, he and the au pair and the little girl went inside. The au pair left the girl in the basement, officials said in court, and followed Brendan Banfield up the stairs. The two found Ryan Joseph hunched over Christine Banfield with a knife at her throat, is what the au pair told detectives. She also said she saw Brandon Banfield, who's an IRS law enforcement agent, pointing a gun at Ryan Joseph. She then told detectives that Brendan Banfield shot Ryan once while Ryan stabbed Christine Banfield. Brendan Banfield then asked the au pair, I don't know why, to retrieve a Glock stored in a safe in the main bedroom's closet. He's law enforcement, and he's telling the au pair to go get a gun. Whew. Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, this is some story. This is twisted stuff.
You said it, Vinny. I feel like if I was watching an episode of a police procedural and this was happening, I would think, okay, this is a little bit over the top. But unfortunately, it's real life, and 2 people are dead.
Let me ask you, Chris McDonough. A law enforcement officer sees a man in the bedroom with a knife to his wife's throat. And then he shoots him once and then tells the au pair to go get a gun? What's going on here?
Well, you know, as Jigsaw John would say from LAPD of 43 years in homicide, this is DLR. Does not look right, does not sound right. Not only that, he's using a service weapon. And the fact that they've, you know, put the child down in the basement, there's all kinds of red flags going on here, Vinny. And, what Kane was just saying a minute ago, she's 100% right. And that, this is going to have all kinds of layers to it. But that first, responding officers are going to set the stage for a really good homicide investigation.
This is from NBC4 down in Washington. Banfield's husband and their au pair, 23-year-old Juliana Perez Margulies, both called 911 that morning and were at the scene when Fairfax County officers arrived. The husband told police that he shot Ryan. But on Thursday, police said forensic evidence and multiple interviews have shown that it was the au pair who shot Ryan. That's one of the strange facts here, Anya and Kevin, that there are two weapons, one law enforcement officer and the other a 22-year-old attractive au pair from Brazil. Figuring out why one or two guns were used here seems to be the key to unlocking part of what happened inside that room.
Yeah, I'll say, Vinny, and this is a situation where I think, and Chris knows this with his law enforcement background, and I think that's so valuable to kind of see what passes the smell test here. But when we're looking at this and we're seeing, I mean, in a traumatic situation, maybe the brain blocks out a few details, you might get a few details wrong. But, I mean, who shot Ryan seems like a pretty big fact, and the fact that that was misrepresented to investigators seems very off.
And Chris, would there be any reason for a member of law enforcement who has an intruder with a knife killing his wife to leave the room at any moment, like when he's the one with the gun?
No, not at all. In fact, that would probably be a really big question in relationship to not only the criminal allegations, but remember, because he is LE, there's also an administrative officer-involved shooting investigation that goes on behind the scenes. So he gets to sit in a room with investigators without Miranda, and he needs to give a statement as to why his service weapon was discharged. So there could be some information under the covers that we're not aware about.
And by the way, if there's a criminal in your home with a knife and you've got a gun in your hand and you have an au pair and your child's in the basement, you send the au pair to the basement to protect the child. You don't go get the Glock. I'm just saying.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Guests are staying with us. Coming up next, I told you it took a while for investigators to get to where they landed. When did this investigation shift?
One person was shot and killed. The other one was stabbed and killed. We're working through the order of things. We're working through identifying the person responsible for each, because it may not be the same person.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
He's in the suitcase still. There are multiple domestic violence incidents.
You two hitting each other.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
He told you, Sarah, I can't breathe.
George Torres locked inside of a suitcase, begging for help.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
So I'll say this, that we're working through the exact nature, because there's different relationships amongst the four people inside the home. And I'm not quite prepared to describe those relationships right now, because we're still working through some next of kin notifications. But again, I'll just say that all four people inside the home are known to each other. All four people are accounted for. 2 are dead and 2 are with the Fairfax County Police Department.
So there's the chief on the day of the murders, addressing the public, wondering what's happening here in this beautiful suburb. I mean, double murder? So there he's talking about 2 people dead, 2 people down at the police station, speaking with Fairfax County Police. Now, I want to flash forward now, because at that point, the investigation is just beginning, right? It's just beginning. And that's in 2023, in February. So now you go to September of 2024. Here's the same chief talking about the investigation.
At what point did Brendan become a suspect in this case? I know initially the narrative was that Joseph stabbed Christine. At what point did you stop believing that and begin to look at Brendan?
So that kind of gets back to our efforts to kind of describe gently that we can't go into certain aspects of the case, and that's one of them. So again, there's a jury that will assemble, and they're going to hear these facts in much greater detail than you're hearing them today.
And that was really a crucial question there from the reporter, talking about, well, Joseph Ryan was the one supposedly who stabbed Christine to death. The third party who was in the house, who didn't live there. right? So he's got the knife, he stabbed her, but then the husband gets charged with the murder. So that brings me to my next question, which is, when did the investigation shift and really shift the focus onto Brendan for 2 murders? The au pair for the murder of Joseph Ryan. Still with me, the host of the Murder Sheet podcast, Kevin Greenlee and Anya Kane, and former homicide detective and host of the Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough is with us. This is a big moment. I want to show you, I would call this circumstantial evidence of something, and the something is a romantic relationship between the husband and father and the au pair. First photo, February 2023, at the time of the murder. What you're seeing here is Juliana, the au pair's guest room and her closet. You see 2 arrows pointing to 2 pieces of clothing. If you recognize the colors for the Brazilian soccer team, like a Brazilian jersey and then a red dress in the guest room. In the guest room, okay? That's in February of 2023. They go back to the house in October of 2023, and they take a look at the closet. The closet's emptied out. Did the au pair move out? Where'd all the clothes go? Where could they be? Mystery solved. Take a look. It's the primary bedroom, the main bedroom. And there's that same jersey. There's that same red dress. It looks like the au pair's clothing is now in the closet in the primary bedroom. Oh my goodness. Is there anything else there? You ready? Oh, a photograph on the end table there. Look to the right. It's a photograph of the husband slash, I guess, widower slash father and the 22-year-old au pair. The au pair is now with the husband. Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, I mean, it's a cliche. It's almost, not almost a cliche, it's actually a cliche, but a cliche that seemingly, according to prosecutors, has manifested itself into this twisted murder plot.
Yes, indeed, it does seem like something you'd expect almost out of a bad movie. But in this case, it is true. It appears as if these 2 were a couple. And in fact, before the marriage ended in this murder, the 2 of them even took a trip together to New York. They had quite the affair. And that obviously suggests pretty obviously a motive.
And Chris McDonough, when you're investigating homicide and you're speaking with people close to the at least one of the victims, and they kind of leave that little fact out, that's problematic.
Yeah, lust is a huge problem. And in this situation, obviously they locked them in early on in their statements. And as they started digging probably a little bit deeper into their digital footprint, they had some questions, and they went back to that house, and boom, there it is sitting on the nightstand. And so that's kind of a red herring initially. We don't know each other, yada, yada. And now all of a sudden it's a landmine.
Chris, are you surprised that a member of law enforcement would be this sloppy?
Very. You know, the fact that murder was even a consideration in relationship, if he was even having this affair, which it sounds like he was, but you know, the fact that there are 2 guns now, that may account for an explanation of gunshot residue. He knows the drill in relationship to the, you know, interviewing and stuff, but what he didn't anticipate was, you know, the fact that the story wasn't going to line up. And as Kevin and Ann have talked about very, very well, this guy's got some real problems, and so does the au pair.
Now the other thing in this story, Anya and Kevin, is that the au pair is the one initially arrested, and the husband, the father, is the one walking free, and her family was kind of like up in arms about this, saying you don't have the real killer here, and that created a little bit of controversy. My guess, though, is you're probably moving a little bit slower for the member of law enforcement, not because he's a member of law enforcement, but because of his level of sophistication and perhaps trying to get the au pair to flip on him.
Absolutely. And this is a situation where she even made a comment like that in a phone call to him, where she basically said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I hope you're not just staying with me so I don't turn on you. So this is a situation we've heard from interviewing law enforcement officers that in a conspiracy murder case, it's really important to do things in the right order, to like set up the dominoes so they fall in the exact right way. And that's why those conspiracy cases can be a bit of a tough nut to crack, because you want to go in order. You want to start at the bottom and then work your way up to the person who may be most culpable.
Chris, we have about 25 seconds here. Based upon what we know at this point, obviously we don't know everything, how would you analyze the strength of the prosecution's case here?
I think the strength of it initially, because of the fact that he says he shot in self-defense, and then he learns that that individual may be alive. He had a duty at that point to stop. And the fact that he says to the au pair, hey, get the other gun, shoot him again, that's a huge problem for the defense in this particular case. I think the prosecution has a good, strong case.
All right, big thank you to Chris McDonough, Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee. Appreciate it. A lot more to get to. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation into the au pair love triangle murder trial. It's a case prosecutors say involves an innocent man following his fetish and a wife and mother killed in a cold, twisted BDSM murder plot. Here's the story. Christine Banfield was married to IRS law enforcement agent Brendan Banfield. They lived in the leafy D.C. suburb of Herndon, Virginia. Together, they had a child who was 4 years old. The couple hired an au pair from Brazil named Juliana Magalhaes to help with their daughter. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, a man named Joseph Ryan showed up at the house. He was responding to a BDSM ad from a woman looking for some rough sex and knife play. What happened that morning inside the Banfield's home is now the subject of 2 murder trials. Christine was stabbed and killed, while Joseph Ryan was shot and killed. Prosecutors say it was the husband, Brendan, and the au pair, Juliana, who are responsible. Exactly what happened is murky, to say the least, but it will be up to a jury to figure it all out. This is some plot. Like if this is true, this is some really disturbing type of sinister plan is what the allegations are here. So as we dig into this, on the day of the murder, the chief of the Fairfax County Police Department spoke, and you're getting some information about this. And just think about where we are, right? We're in the suburbs of D.C. It's a beautiful place, nice home, families everywhere, and then this happens. Take a listen.
This morning at 7:49 a.m., we received a cell phone 911 call that was an open line hang-up. When we get the cell phone 911 calls, it doesn't give us an exact address, but that call was captured and noted. And 13 minutes later at 8:02 a.m., we received a cell phone 911 call from the very same cell phone, and 2 persons communicated with our 911 call taker. The husband of this home, who I am not going to identify beyond identifying him as a husband, and the au pair,
who resides in this home, who I'm not going to identify beyond describing her as an au pair. At that 802 911 cell phone call, the husband and the au pair communicate with the 911 call taker. The husband tells the 911 call taker that he just shot a man inside of his home. And the husband tells the 911 call taker that the man who he had just shot had stabbed his wife.
Okay, so there you have it. Like 911 call, that is the story. That is the story for the husband. I come into the house, a man is stabbing and killing my wife, so I shoot him. It's like self-defense, defense of others. And that's what happened. 911 calls made by him and the au pair, but there's the initial one where no one's there, sort of a hang up, then 3 minutes later, which is kind of strange to begin with. But that's their story. Brings me to my next question. It's not about their story, but what is the prosecution's theory of what happened here inside that home in Virginia? Because we got the quick story from the au pair and from the husband. Joining me to uncover all of this, private investigator, founder of Victim News Online, Erica Morse. Also with us, podcast host and reporter for Pop Crime TV, Lauren Conlon. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with this from the Washington Post, which outlines part of what the prosecution is saying here. On the morning of the killings, Brendan Banfield was scheduled to report to work at 7:30 a.m. He works for the IRS. He's law enforcement. But a search warrant affidavit alleges that after leaving his neighborhood at around 7:10, he pulled into a nearby McDonald's. Pulled into McDonald's at 7:10, maybe getting breakfast on the way, I don't know, and sat in his vehicle until Magalese called him at 7:37. Erica Morse, it's a little fishy.
For me, it isn't. Listen, Vinnie, anyone who works investigations is trained on the complexities of those investigations. And people like us know how to convolute a case, how to make a story and an alibi so believable while concocting a situation that is almost unbelievable. He went to a public place where he could have been in a drive-through, in a parking spot, or just stopping to use the Wi-Fi or make a call. It was the perfect alibi from my perspective. And he was just lying in wait for the phone call to come in so that he could go in and essentially execute the rest of this very premeditated plan.
Now, let's go to the next little piece here from the Washington Post. At the same time, Ryan pulled up to the Banfield home. This is Joseph Ryan, the man responding to this BDSM ad. He pulls up to the Banfield home for a planned rendezvous with a woman identified in the dating app as Anastasia 9, portrayed in a profile photo on the social networking platform FetLife as a petite woman in a one-piece bathing suit. Lauren Conlon, the theory, I guess, here is that it's not Christine, the wife, who is going on this app, but someone pretending to be her is going on this app.
That's correct, Vinny. So prosecutors believe that Brendan and Juliana concocted this insane plan to pose as Christine and lure Joseph Ryan to their home in hopes that he would have this knife play thing going on with Christine. And I want to remind you that this was all supposed to happen before 8 a.m., which to me is a huge red flag. But this photo of Christine in the one-piece bathing suit, prosecutors say that she had sent this picture of herself to Brendan Banfield, and he had sent it to Juliana Magalese, and she had emailed it to herself. So you connect the dots here.
Yeah, that's an easy dot to connect. Sometimes 2 + 2 = 4. Let's go to more from Washington Post report here. They discovered, too, that the FetLife account that Ryan had been messaging with was maintained on Christine Banfield's computer, despite not finding one iota of evidence that she was into knife play, binding, and BDSM, said the prosecutor. 1 month before the killings, authorities said that Christine Banfield sent a picture of herself to her husband, which Magalee's lawyer said she also sent to herself in an email, a petite woman in a one-piece bathing suit. Hours later, prosecutors said the photo was uploaded to a new FetLife profile using the username Anastasia9. How does someone even come up with this, Erica Morse? This is diabolical. Look at it this way. I mean, what you're doing, if this theory is for real, is that you're luring a man over who's going to die. You've got a woman who's going to die, and then the aftermath of her death is, well, Christine, she just had this crazy fetish that no one knew about, and it's like she's going to be blamed for her own death.
I can think of 2, maybe 3 police procedurals that have already aired this storyline throughout the years. You know, we can't write this stuff, Vinnie. If you and I were to write this as writers from a fictional standpoint, they would mock us because it is so sensational, it is so unbelievable. But again, understanding the pieces of a procedure in an investigation, he made this so difficult to unravel, if not for that digital trail, and for putting pressure on Juliana by arresting her first and allowing him that freedom while she sat there and just kind of boiled. And her mother ended up working her because, trust me, I know Brazilian moms, and I guarantee her mom was saying, you do not want to be in there. You are not taking the fall for this man. And so it was really a great setup by arresting her first.
Absolutely. The other problem was the picture on the nightstand. Like, they're a couple several months later as investigators go in there. Here's also from the Washington Post. Using Telegram. We heard about Telegram from Stephen Stearns down in Central Florida, an encrypted messaging app. Ryan and Anastasia9 discussed rough sex. So there's a discussion going on here, including experimenting with blood play, an arrangement in which one person deliberately cuts another. Ultimately, the users decided to meet on that February morning. So, Lauren, I guess it's not just responding to an ad, but there's an ongoing conversation about what this rendezvous is going to be like. And Joseph Ryan believes, I guess, that he's speaking with Christine.
Yeah, how sick is that, Vinny? It really does make me sick if these allegations are true. I mean, why not just leave your wife? Why go through all of this? And apparently, according to friends, Joseph Ryan was pretty open about what he liked to do in the bedroom. So this wasn't necessarily a secret, but man, Christine Banfield, going back to what you said, Brendan Banfield allegedly was going to let their daughter believe that her mother died in this manner and it was her own fault. It truly blows my mind.
Yeah, and the details here, Erica, with the ongoing conversation for Joseph Ryan makes it much more real. It's not like he's just showing up as someone that he hasn't been communicating with. That's a big part of the lure here.
Well, yes. And again, I can think of a case right now that's actually getting ready to go to trial where someone was set up using a fake social media account, Vinny. It's not the first time this has happened, and a law enforcement official in the federal realm would know that. So when you pull from high-profile cases, when you convolute, when you create difficult situations that seem impossible, and it also tells me that there was that consciousness of guilt afterwards, because the law enforcement official would know that they had to get rid of those phones and get new ones, because in order for them to get the full digital trail, they had to get the phone with the apps and not just the call logs and the cell data and the geofencing and the tower dumps. They had to have the physical phones in order to get all of that app data, and they got rid of everything and got new phones 2 weeks later.
Wow. All right. Our guests are staying with us. Still to come, who was the mastermind?
Fairfax County police officers took Brendan Banfield into custody, and he's been brought to the same adult detention center where Juliana Perez Margulies has been since last year when she was arrested for the murder of Mr. Ryan.
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
A 17-year-old boy charged with killing 2 people during a chaotic protest.
I intended to stop the people who were attacking me.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. All new Sunday night, 8/7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan. Fairfax County police officers took Brendan Banfield into custody, and he's been brought to the same adult detention center where Juliana Perez Margulies has been since last year when she was arrested for the murder of Mr. Ryan.
So they're both arrested. They're both charged in this case. Her trial scheduled first. She was arrested first. Separate trials. Her trial is scheduled to go first. But you've got 2 defendants in all of this. And you remember the doomsday bells that we covered, Lori and Chad. And we looked at them and we looked at their relationship and trying to figure out exactly what was going on in that relationship and in their conspiracy to commit all those murders. I'm kind of thinking the same thing in this one, which brings me to my next question, which is, who was the mastermind here? Who was the mastermind? Where does this idea come from? Who's the first one to say, hey, murder is the answer? What will prosecutors argue here? Still with me, founder of Victims News Online, Erica Morse, private investigator and podcast host and reporter for Pop Crime TV, Lauren Conlin. Lauren, let's evaluate this issue, because I always think it's important. How do you think the idea first, becomes part of this alleged conspiracy? Like, who comes up with the idea?
This is total speculation, Vinny, but if I had to guess, Juliana, she's from Brazil. Her mom cleans houses for a living. She shows up at this affluent $1 million house. She falls in love with Brendan Banfield, the husband. I think he convinced her to work with him and map out this disgusting, elaborate scheme. Again, I'm not a betting woman, but I'm willing to bet. I mean, when she moved there, she's 21 years old. Think about yourself at 21 years old. You're easily impressionable. I mean, not making excuses for her by any means, but if I had to guess, I would definitely go for Brendan Banfield. And one more thing, allegedly there was a woman who came out and said that Brendan Banfield had a relationship with her outside of his marriage. And he made the statement, things would be so much easier if my wife wasn't around or if my wife was out of the picture. I'm paraphrasing.
There is a thing called divorce. Every time I cover one of these types of trials, it's so incredibly frustrating. And it comes, what, you're afraid of the shame? Are you too cheap? Like, it doesn't, none of it ever makes sense.
Right.
It never makes sense. So, Erica, we've got 2 cases. The au pair goes first. What are you thinking about that trial? And if he, in fact, is the one who planned and plotted and figured out this crazy, ridiculous conspiracy, does she last minute flip, or do you think she still is in love with him and is still holding on to hope that she'll get out?
I think enough time will have passed, enough pressure will have been applied, and she will come to her senses. Now, this is just my prediction, but historically, with the right pressure and the right conversations, a woman in her position can be, I don't want to say influenced, but can be convinced that the right move for her future is to look out for herself and only herself. Listen, he had means, he had motive, he had opportunity, and he had everything to gain from this. So there is just no clear-cut question in my mind, or no question in my mind that this was clear-cut, had to have been him. I don't buy that a young girl came over from Brazil. You know what? I had a sister from Brazil who lived with me. When she came over for 2 years, the last thing on her mind was concocting some story that was going to put her in an American prison. It doesn't work that way. Oh, but he absolutely had the arrogance to think he could outsmart his fellow law enforcement officials and concoct a plan that would be so confusing and so very difficult to prove in a court of law.
And following up on that, Lauren, trying to understand exactly how it went down that morning is not easy. You know, how did the actual stabbing happen, the shooting, which happened first? What did Joseph Ryan do when he knocked on the door? How did he get in the house? All these questions, to me, are still a little puzzling right now.
Vinny, I have so many questions, and I emailed the Deputy Prosecutor's Office, Kelsey Gill, basically like, can you give me something here, anything, a quote, I'll take whatever you have. And they were kind enough to email me back, but they essentially told me to go fly a kite. They are not saying anything more than they have to about this case. And I understand. Again, I just have so many questions. I'm so nosy about this. I mean, the timeline doesn't even make sense. The first 911 call was at 7:47 a.m., but Juliana called Brendan at 7:37 a.m. I mean, it's like, so did it happen before they took off for the zoo? Did it happen at 6 a.m.? I mean, we don't know. So I guess we'll wait for Juliana's trial, which is in November. I think that's going to be a huge trial as well. I think it's going to be very, very busy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very crazy.
All right, Erica, you want to tie this up? We have about 20 seconds. In your theory on how this exactly happened.
Oh, gosh. Again, I think Lauren's right. We don't know yet, but I think that the digital data is going to tell the story. Who was where at what time, and when did Joseph Ryan enter that house? And I think there are probably messages in there that also tell us how he was told to enter that house. I don't think we've seen it all yet, and there's a lot more to see.
Absolutely. Erica Morse, Lauren Conlon, great to have you. Thank you so much. All right. I've never seen a case quite like this. Now, if these accusations are true here, it would take an incredible level of absolute evil. You know, you've got a little girl losing her mom in an extremely brutal manner, while her killers did everything to make her mom look like a sick, perverted woman who brought this onto herself. This case really leaves me wondering, how could anyone even conceive of something like this? Let's just hope that that little girl can survive it all. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues.